Hey, welcome to the next episode of the Default Profitable Podcast. You're listening to stories, successes and victories, some failures, and just some interesting anecdotes from business owners. My name is Matt Nettleton. I'm your host, and today my guest is Jessica Roosa. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Matt, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. This is going to be interesting for a couple of reasons to me. We're going to talk about your business and how you got there. I actually want to hear about the business that you do because it's interesting to me now. I mentioned that in one of our messages based on the way my diet has been the last couple of years. So looking forward to hearing that too.
Okay. I'll give you the sales pitch, I guess. That's what I'm hearing, Matt, is I get to give you personally the sales pitch.
Yes. So why don't we do this? We've been in touch for a couple of years. Why don't we start with introducing yourself to the people who are listening, and then we can introduce your business. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Me, apart from my business?
Yes.
I'm a person apart from my business. Okay, Matt, I'll learn this. Jessica Roosa. I am a person apart from my business. Sorry about the joke there. 5 kids, most of them grown, have one daughter left at home. So young adults. With one 16-year-old daughter left at home, passionate about everything outdoors, our natural world, raising kids, helping people.
All right. So you said one at home. How old are your kids? What's the
breadth? 27 down to 16. So 5 kids, 27 down to 16.
I'm 25 to 16.
Yes. And so you're right there with me then.
Yes.
80 grandkids. So I have one grandbaby I get to watch tonight.
None of that.
None of that. Well, it's absolutely amazing. Just like everyone says, absolutely
Excellent.
Amazing. True gift of having children is having grandchildren.
It's got to even out at some point. That's right. That's all I keep thinking.
I'm saying I'm almost there. My 16-year-old is graduating this year. So in May, after 27 years of parenting, I'm almost to a finish line, if there is such a thing in parenting.
Yes, that sounds excellent. All right, so tell us about the business.
So business, meat processing and meat sales. So concentration on natural foods. So we exist in a very niche part of the world of providing good meat. So we might know that 4 major providers provide the majority of meat in the United States. We don't compete in that space, but rather provide a service mainly for producers to get their meat out to the market. So these are smaller farmers that want to get their product out to the market and need a partner to do so. So the majority of our business is meat processing. We do sell as well. We have a couple butcher shops. One in Lebanon, St. Adrian's Meat and Sausage, and then one in Lafayette, this old butcher shop. And we also operate cabins as an agritourism or get back to the land, understand the farming community. So we offer our cabins through the name Cabins and Candlelight.
When did the business start?
The business started when as a first generation farmer. That's an unusual thing to be. It's also an unusual thing to be a first generation meat processor because both of those business models are usually generational. But I am the first generation, started experimenting with farming 25 years ago through purchase of my first small 90-acre farm that I operate on now, and then incorporated in 2009 when we were getting ready to expand into the meat processing. So 15 years of an incorporated business, 25 years of learning ag and trying to understand ag.
So what did you do before then?
Before that, I was a chemist for a very short time. So graduated from Purdue University and biology, chemistry, worked at the bioanalytical systems in West Lafayette for a short period of time as an analytical chemist. Decided to stay home, did some contract work, report writing, that type of thing for a little while, and then decided that I wanted to be able to incorporate my kids in whatever I was going to do next, and started farming.
Like, I'm trying to figure out what it was that you said, hey, I work in a nice clean lab with chemistry and it's all measured and analytical. And instead I'm going to go be a farmer, which is everything but nice and clean and analytical.
what made me do such a crazy thing?
Yes.
Because it is a crazy thing to do. So my father had a PhD in literature. He was a professor for a little while, ended up owning a distribution company. Great mentor. He was brilliant, yet he didn't do anything with his hands. He was a brilliant man that couldn't produce anything with his hands. And I wanted to raise children in a way that allowed them to both learn and be able to physically take care of themselves. And that's what farming was all about for me.
Okay. Which obviously has worked because they've made it. They're 25.
They're young. They're wonderful young beings.
Anything that happens at this point's on them.
Whenever I coach a beginning farmer, a new farmer, I do believe fully that if you raise good kids that can take care of themselves, that might be the only thing you get from your farming. That might be. But if that is, you've done a good job. You've done a good job.
You're okay.
They're okay.
Yeah.
So have good kids. Yep.
So you get into the farming business, and it was with a very specific type of sheep, I believe.
I do have a specific type of sheep now, which is Katahdins, and I continue to raise those. I entered the farming business without really thinking about entering the farming business, but in a means of trying to figure out what I could raise on small ground. So I have a stack of failures. Any good entrepreneur should have a very long stack of failures, I've told.
Yes.
One day I had to write them down just to convince myself I was okay with my number of failures. One of them being the produce business. So I tried to grow produce. That's very difficult, failed at that. I've had pastured pork. I've had pastured poultry, raised 10,000 chickens a year, a dairy share, multitudes of different things that Jessica has tried and not done well. Stayed in raising sheep. So I have about 300 Katahdin sheep that I sell into the Muslim marketplace, halal marketplace some, and then process some for butcher shops.
So entrepreneurs typically one end of the spectrum or the other. One end is, hey, there's a great economic opportunity, not really interested in the product, but I can make money. The other is there's an emotional desire to do this. I hope the money thing works out. It sounds like you were closer to the I hope the money thing works out than I've got a great business plan.
That's especially with that early farm. And I'm not alone. I talked to lots of farmers that are in my same boat, and I'm at least a little gray haired, and now I can pass on some wisdom and certainly consult others. Now I know that sounds, on what not to do, right? What I did wrong when getting in business, which is not concentrating on a business plan for the first 10 years. Sometimes you call it a hobby farm. I also say don't let your hobby go crazy. You don't have to turn that hobby into a business, but that's what I did. I turned a hobby, let's learn how to farm, produce your own food. And then I ended up turning it into a business. And so if you look at it from that angle, I really started in 2009. 15 years ago,
right,
with a business plan and the decision that, okay, now it's all in, all of our retirements pulled out and put into this newfangled processing business that we're going to concentrate on and make go.
Well, it's interesting that you say that it took you essentially 9-10 years to come up with a business plan, because this is like episode 127 or so. And in about 124 of the episodes, the two consistent pieces of advice are before you start, have a plan and make sure you have financial reserves. And 124 of the 125 people that gave that advice follow that up by saying, and I didn't have a plan and I didn't really have financial reserves.
Yeah, I agree. I will say that is, that is the advice I give as well. In 2009, I'll say I had a plan. I had a feasibility study in 2009. So I'd spent an entire year developing a plan, developing funding, getting ready to launch a business that still didn't have enough funding. The plan was not, the plan did not make us execute without pain. Of course, we had a fire a year after getting into business, and nobody plans for that, right? So nobody plans for that. So,
right.
I guess I'd say I'm both of those. It took me 10 years. I wasn't planning on being in business for those 10 years until the decision was made. And then there was a business plan.
I think the exercise of planning, usually proves to be more valuable than the plan that you produce, because you learn how to think about your business. And that's probably helped you as a consultant.
Yeah. So as a consultant, right? As a consultant, you get to, draw on the things you do well and the things you didn't do so well, and draw on both of those experiences because they're both valuable at that point in time. And probably the things that you didn't do well are even more valuable than the things that you did well at that point in time, as far as helping others.
I have often said that I don't have enough time to make all the mistakes on my own. I'm going to need to copy from somebody else so I can avoid those things. Save me a little bit of time.
Yeah. One of your questions along the way is what you wish you knew. And I wish I knew that when getting started. That's
what I was going to, what are some things that you wish you did know when you started that would have made it easier? Where do you even begin?
As a young and ignorant 33-year-old, that's what when I really started a business. I was 33 and still young and ignorant at that point in time. So what I wish I knew is to really study everybody else's failures. Why was agriculture difficult as a first generation farmer? Why is processing difficult? What are the infrastructure costs? I knew what they were. I studied it. But I didn't study the why not everybody's in that marketplace, right? When you have this gap in the market that you're trying to answer to, you're like, oh, there's a gap in the market. I'm going to answer to that. Didn't think about the question of why is there a gap in the market? And I think that probably would have been a better question to be asking at that point in time. So I guess that's my answer is learn from others.
Learn from others. But I do think that's, there's the one saying is don't tear down a wall until you ask the question of why it was built. I think the other thing that you might want to, think about as you start a business is don't jump into the gap in the market until you figure out why there's a gap in the market.
Yeah, Matt, where were you when 20 or 10, 15 years ago? That's a statement I needed.
Yeah. So you still have passion for the industry, but how has that passion changed since 2003, 2009, wherever you want to go back to?
Still have, a ton of passion, despite, my statement that what I should have known then. I am blessed to be able to get up every day and do what I'm just on this planet Earth to do, which is provide good food and really support our farming community. So to me, that's everything. How is my passion different? I had probably a little different definition of good food 15 years ago. So I was, certified organic all the way and very niche, even more micro niche than I am today. Today, I'm about asking the customer what their goals are in their eating habits, and then matching that with the right raising methods. Whereas before I was about, this is the only way you should farm and this is the only way you should eat. Well, that's not your customer base, right? So I'm better at saying, okay, let's have a conversation about you and what you want, and let me help you make that happen.
Tell me about the starting point, which is this is the only way you should raise a farm. This is the only way you should eat. Where were you back then?
So our first customer base that would drive out to the farm to get what we were raising then, they were really people that were sick. They were ultra motivated to be willing to come out to the countryside and get their food for the week. Either they were sick or they had somebody else in their life that was sick. And so they were reactive at that point. That's a hard market to serve, a very meaningful market to serve. Felt honored to do so. I'm glad now that we're proactive. So we're providing food to more. It's better named. More people are aware of eating good food, and
yes,
local ag is almost mainstream, and most people have at least thought about going to a farmer's market, or at least they know that they exist.
Yes.
So more people are there and watching their labels at the grocery store and those kind of things. So the conversation is a lot easier today than it was 25 years ago.
Like my wife has anti-inflammatory diet now. And so we're very, she's gotten me through that. I've done some work with the Heritage Group Accelerator program where we got into PFAS. So now I have a whole different set of pots and pans at home, much less everything else. The food supply thing, the local farmer, the organic, the grass-fed, grass-finished, that how big a switch has that been with the public coming to you? I mean, you said everybody's heard of it, but what's that done to the level of interest in what you're talking about?
It's a more common conversation, but it's gone two ways. So it's a more common conversation, but there's also a heck of a lot more options out there for people. So the grocery store has responded. National brands have responded, and they're trying to offer clean alternatives. None of them ever replaced, to me, knowing who's raised your food and being able to ask them and truly have a relation-based decision on what you're putting into your body. So yes, more popular. Sometimes that works against you. The processing portion of our business, and again, that's 75% of what we do.
Right.
So 75% of our paychecks come from processing meat and providing the means for the farmer to reach their customer directly. So we don't even own that meat. We don't take possession of it. They bring us the animals, and we return the packages to them as a branded product line that they're going to take out and then sell. And that has gotten a heck of a lot of media lately. After we went through the pandemic and we recognized what I was researching back in 2008 that launched me into business was how desperately dangerous our processing infrastructure was in the United States. So I didn't touch on that. I was singing that song 10 years before what happened in the pandemic, which was we saw that our grocery stores actually could go to the point where we didn't have any meat on the shelf. And the small processors would then be filling those gaps, and they backed up. And there was all of a sudden attention from Washington on, wait, where is our infrastructure at? And a good amount of funding that came forward at that point in time to try to fund the infrastructure, because it's a very infrastructure intense operation. One of the things I wish I had known when getting into business, another one, is you're not supposed to be in infrastructure intense businesses, right? You don't want to own it. But agriculture.
Stay away from asset heavy businesses.
Right? Agriculture is, and processing is. They're very infrastructure heavy, asset heavy businesses, which mean that they're hard to enter and hard to maintain and hard to grow. But the passion, knowing that there was a problem in the space, that truly farmers could have a problem getting their product to market, and consumers could have a problem getting product, and nobody was paying attention to that, made me think that was the place I needed to work.
So when somebody comes to you and they're 33 years old and they're thinking of giving up the easy W-2 paycheck to get into farming, and clearly you think that's a great idea, no problem, jump in, water's fine. How do you have that conversation with them? What do you talk to them about?
Where's their business plan?
I don't think you're supposed to say that ironically.
Right. Yeah. So what does that conversation look like? So we're a relationship-based business, and we believe that relationships take time to develop. So we try to offer program. We try to get them involved when they're at a smaller scale so that they can then make decisions that are appropriate for their scale. And get influenced, because, the hardcore, truth of don't farm, it's going to ruin your marriage and and you might go bankrupt is probably not something that they're going to listen to anyways, right? So, how can you gently send a message that it's a labor of love? You got to have this pit in your stomach that there's nothing else you can do. And if you have a pit in your stomach that says there's nothing else you can do, okay, then you're going to do it. And if you don't have that driving force, there's just no reason to look at it.
So Stephanie Daly, probably episode like 6 or 7, whatever, she sells lasagna to people. And she said, if you're not comfortable waking up at 3 a.m. to think about your business, any part of your business, if you're not comfortable doing that, you shouldn't get into it.
I like it.
Because it's either going to consume you or it doesn't matter.
I like that, right? And we all, we're all driven because we have a passion of some sense, right? There's something that, and like you said at the beginning, money wasn't the one that that made me get into it. So it was something else. And we are just a community of people that have a great passion for whatever we're doing.
If 2025 Jessica was to go back to 2003 Jessica and sit down night before you're getting ready to take over this farm and start, in 2025 Jessica says, listen, I'm from the future. Everything works out fine. Tomorrow morning when you go in there, there's a million different things you can do. But here's the one thing you need to do first. What's the first thing a new farmer, new business owner should concentrate on?
Finding a mentor, finding somebody to get next to and learn.
That's the first time somebody has actually used that. So tell me what you mean by that.
Farming in specific, and processing as well are both generational businesses, and going back to why is that so? Well, okay, from my young self, it was just, well, nobody's smart enough to do it. Well, that's ridiculous, right? There's a lot of smart people out there. So why do you need a mentor? You need somebody to help you through that generational knowledge so that my kids just naturally know how to do things that I didn't know how to do, that I still can't do just because they grew up with it. And that's how ag typically is they just know because that's what they grew up with. It's inherent to their nature. And so that mentor can help provide that when they don't have the background, the generational knowledge.
Funny, you made it specific about farming, but there are a lot of businesses where you're coming into the business and the best thing you can do is find somebody else that's done it and ask for help. And the thing that amazes me is the most successful people are the most likely to say, sure, when you want to meet. And they'll tell you, they'll do whatever they can to help you because they've been there and they know other people help them. So
Agreed.
That's good advice. What else should a first time or new business owner do? So they find a mentor. What else should they just start rolling with?
Leadership books every day, self-growth every day. You have to be a person that wants to grow. Every single day is going to be a new challenge. And so if you don't have a growth-minded set of skills with a plan for that growth yourself, then it's going to be hard to stay above the curve, in my opinion. Of course, there's a difference in, determining what size business you want, right? If you're talking about having my husband loves to have a small shop. He's at one of the butcher shops and he loves that he has, one guy that works with him and they have a great relationship, and that's the environment that he shines in and he wants to be in. And I enjoy people and growing a business. I can't say no to the next challenge. And so my mindset is always in growth, which means that you need to be leadership minded and figuring out how you're going to make sure you're set up for success personally.
Yeah, that the design of the business that you want to have matters, whether it's a solopreneur or a 3-person shop or a 400-person shop. You can have either and they're both good. You just have to pick. All right. Well, that's a quick 25 minutes.
Hopefully you learned that you can get good meat in Lebanon. I think that's the closest shop to you.
Well, so here's what we're going to do. Just so everybody who's listening knows, we're going to put your shop locations, website, contact information in the show notes.
Appreciate it very much.
We're going to recommend all that people go look at that. For people that are listening, hit subscribe, leave a review, share this episode with somebody you know who also might be interested in a little bit of more high quality local farm product. Jessica, after 4 years of trying to get in touch, I appreciate actually finally meeting you. And thanks for being a guest.
Likewise, Matt. Appreciate it.
For everybody else, we'll be back next week with the next episode of Default Profitable.